Tonight on the Henry Rollins Show, acclaimed writer and director P.T. Anderson will stop by to discuss his idiosyncratic brand of filmmaking and his many inspirations. Among them, musician Amy Mann, who just happens to be joining Heidi May for an exclusive performance later in the show. Stay right here. Domino's Pizza founder Thomas Monahan is planning on building a town in Florida called Ave Maria. Now, if all goes to plan, the 5,000-acre property will have 11,000 homes and hold an estimated 20,000 residents. In Ave Maria, there will be no pornographic magazines sold, no condoms, and no birth control pills. And sources say no deliveries from Papa John's or Pizza Hut will be allowed. The cable package for residents will not have X-rated channels, so if the residents want porn, well, they're gonna have to make it themselves. Now, like any theme park, there has to be a main attraction, and Ave Maria will have a massive church with a crucifix nearly 65 feet tall. The Lord will surely notice it, especially on Saturday nights when they light it on fire. Now, some people don't think Ave Sharia is a good idea. Of course, the enemy of the right in all things holy, the ACLU, the American Communist Liberal Underground, and other watchdog groups are concerned about the civil rights of the residents and the impact on the environment. Now, Monahan thinks all the uproar is good for business. He sees himself as doing the work of the Lord, and since State Governor Jiggly Jeb Bush was at the groundbreaking ceremony, he knows the fix is in. Why, I hope the plans go right ahead. I do. I hope they eventually wall off the town with an alligator-stocked moat, razor wire, a no-man's land laden with anti-personnel mines, a single-access road, an electro-optic identification system at the gate, armed guards in the tower, and grape Kool-Aid by the gallon. A few years in, after great success with the reality shows, defectors' book deals, and miniseries, the ATF will eventually invade the compound and the whole place will be reduced to ash. Perhaps more Americans can join cults and wall themselves off from the rest of us so we can start having fun again. Jesus will be inside with the faithful, assuredly, but when he wants to get high and see a real rock show, he'll be out here in the real world with the rest of us. Allahu Akbar! Joining me now is P.T. Anderson, a writer and director whose lifelong passion for films led to the masterpieces of contemporary hope and melancholy, Hard Eight, Boogie Nights, Magnolia, and Punch Drunk Love. Paul is taking a break from pre-production on his newest film, There Will Be Blood, to join us today. P.T., it's good to have you on the show.
Thanks, Henry.
Right on.
Yeah.
So, this film, There Will Be Blood, based on an Upton Sinclair novel from the 1920s, it's in pre-production, so you don't know what it looks like yet, but tell me about it.
It tracks the history of a lot of these guys that discovered oil in California in the early 1900s who started out as silver miners, and they sort of went from prospecting for silver and digging in the ground for that, and just sort of times changed and they started digging for oil. And they had to find new ways to get it up and out of the ground. And so I was kind of watching The Treasure of Sierra Madre the other day, and the great thing about that film is they find the gold in a half hour, you know. So the best part of the film isn't finding the gold, it's what happens after you get the gold. So hopefully we'll do a little bit of that, and hopefully there'll be blood. I don't know. I was thinking I would call it There Might Be Blood until we finish shooting it, just to make sure.
Not to jinx it.
Not to jinx it, you know.
So is this film trying to make any kind of statement as far as oil companies dictating American policy worldwide?
No. Goodness, no. I don't know how you drew those connections. But, you know, what we got to do first with this film is just tell the story of this guy that Daniel Day-Lewis is playing, and kind of just think about that first. I mean, the sort of crux of the story is basically the relationship between him and his son. and this town that he goes into and leases some property and tries to drill for oil. And if we can just sort of focus on the small things, the big things might accidentally end up taking care of themselves, hopefully.
What made you want to base a film off Upton Sinclair's book? Like, why this, why now? Besides, you know, the current events aspect.
I think mainly I was, you know, I think I was kind of burned out, and I found this book by Upton Sinclair, and I felt like, honestly, out of kind of boredom, one day I just started sort of taking pieces from the book and writing them as my own, writing them as a script. Didn't think I was going to adapt it, and they just started to stick. They looked really good. They looked really, really good, and it was really inspiring. And one thing led to another, and you turn around and it's a year later, and it's kind of become something else, and you wonder where half the shit came from, and the next thing you know, you've got 9 weeks before you go to shoot a film, and you're just like,
Which is where you are right now.
yeah.
So it's been a few years since you did a movie. Have you been, well, what have you been doing?
I couldn't account for all the years, to be honest with you. Kind of life intervened and ended up having a baby and just trying to put it on the side for a bit. And I think I just kind of stopped and tried to sleep late and concentrate on writing this film. And it ended up taking longer than I thought.
Okay, so you've been working at being a dad and writing.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fair enough.
That's a pretty good excuse. Yeah, you're allowed. Okay. Let's talk about the great director, Altman.
Yeah.
Buddy of yours, influence on you.
Well, I worked on a film last year in the summer called Prairie Home Companion.
Yeah.
And Robert called me because he can't get insurance now because he's 83, he's 82 years old, and he can't get insurance. So when he goes to make a film, there needs to be a backup director. And so he went to St. Paul and basically just sat with Bob at the monitor all day and listened to him tell stories, and we joked around. And there's not a lot that kind of gets him down or bothers him. He's got a great saying. He says, just giggle and give in, you know? And you just feel like, I get that, I get that. I mean, there were times when we were sitting there and I'd kind of get worked up about something on the set or say, Bob, you know, and he'd just kind of look at me like, what the hell are you worried about? You know, it's all gonna be all right, you know? And I sort of learned, I like had a real kind of a new film school again, kind of going back and just hanging out with him. And it made me excited about going to make movies again. I think I'd kind of been put off for a little while and just was tired and burned out, and watching him work was just sort of like this smack in the face, like, you don't get tired and you don't slow down. You go back to work, and it's really kind of, it would be selfish to do anything else, you know.
Well, let's talk about your films and the actors you use. We always see, well, fairly often we see John C. Reilly, Philip Baker Hall, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and finally one actor who does not use a middle initial or a middle name, Luis Guzman, and they're all great. Is there why you keep using, you know, this ensemble approach?
You know, it's got to be a lot like being in a band, you know, where you feel like the more you play together, the better you get.
Yeah.
When you work with people that you know and it's going well, there's nothing like it. I mean, there's just nothing like that joy of watching an actor that you dig, you know, that you maybe you've written something for, to see them kind of do something new with it that you didn't expect, or to, there's nothing also too like the relationship where I can feel like I can help them or they can save me. I mean, there's been so many times when we've been making films with the group that you just mentioned where I know that I've just gone completely out to lunch or completely out to sea, and it's just such a great feeling when someone that you work with closely sort of comes up with an idea or saves the day and kind of guides a scene back on track. I mean, that's sort of a great thing. You know, you're not just a director out there trying to tell actors what to do. You sort of got somebody that's watching your ass as well.
Right. In your films, you tend to stay with some musical people as well. Michael Penn, John Bryan, and Amy Mann, who's also conveniently our musical guest later in the show. Obviously, has helped you with your stuff. What is it about her music that speaks to you in a cinematic sense?
You know, I'd always loved Amy, and then she had a song called Save Me that it is the end of Magnolia, and she had given me a demo tape of it, and it just really affected me, and it was a massive, you know, when you kind of, somebody hands you something that's such, it just feels like a trampoline, you know, like to kind of catapult you into being able to work. And when she gave me that, it was a real, it kind of opened the floodgates to help me write that film at the time. You know, something can come along into your life, and so she says, "Oh, just listen to this." You just, it helps you trigger, it helps you kind of organize, it helps you sort of now make sense of a lot of different things, and that's what happened with Amy, and that became a really terrific relationship on that film.
Yeah.
You can see that she's not just a singer, and she's not just a pop star. She's got more to her. She's a writer, she's a storyteller. She's, you know, if she wasn't doing this, she'd be writing books, or she'd be making movies, probably, you know.
Well, for your next movie, is there any music that's being a determinant factor in how the film's going to go?
And not at the moment. I mean, I just kind of spent a lot of time listening to a kind of crazy cornucopia of stuff when I was writing the film, and like crazy Polish pirate music. I keep thinking of it as this, some Penderecki stuff, you know.
Penderecki?
Yeah, and I don't know if any of it's going to end up in the film, but it's certainly, you know, it's ended up in The Shining and pieces like that. There's lots of other stuff that he's done too, but it was a great kind of reservoir to fill up on. It's just pretty scary stuff. It was just nice to sort of turn out the lights and listen to some of that stuff. It's terrifying, you know. It's good for an oil movie, I think.
Well, this is the Independent Film Channel. That's what our show is on. So you have a lot of, you know, young aspiring film directors who watch this station with great interest. And you would be one of those people they watch with great interest. Could you offer any advice to someone who is young, bright-eyed, and earnestly trying to get right in there?
The one thing I remember thinking initially when I was trying to make films, and you always felt like you got nervous that somebody else was right who was talking to you, you know, who maybe was in a position of power, like that their opinion somehow was right or better than yours, and somehow you could never stop to think like, no, it's just different. You just think differently than I do, and that's okay, you know, but I'm not wrong. You know, you can get filled with such fear, and it's really easy to just get your heart broken and kind of sort of beaten. You're sort of attempting to make films. I mean, it's a miracle anytime any one of them gets made, you know? It's a miracle, and it's a miracle every time. I feel like it's a miracle every time a scene kind of gets done and through the birth canal and done. I mean, it's never any less of a miracle or any less difficult. There's just a kind of, there just should be no fear, you know? I think that's, just always remember kind of being pummeled by fear early on and feeling like, God, if I could have just gotten rid of that fear earlier, this might have been a little bit easier. Just don't give a fuck. That's kind of the best thing to do.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, PT, I greatly admire you, man. I really look forward to the next film, There Will Be Blood, and thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks, Henry.
Right
it's
on.
great to be here. I
Thank
love
you.
this show.
Thank you.
Okay.
Coming up a bit later on the show, an exclusive musical performance from Amy Mann. But first, a few words from the people on IFC's Soapbox.
I'm Patrick Duff. I own a medical marijuana dispensary.
My name is Patty, and my son is addicted to marijuana.
I'm Richard Eastman, former HIV/AIDS commissioner for the County of Los Angeles.
My name is Bob Adams. I'm with the Church of Scientology International here in Hollywood, California.
I wrote the book 9021 Grow, all about Hollywood and weed.
I'm Al Dirty. I'm a fully functional pothead, and if you need something to smoke, I got you.
Hi, I'm Francis Della Vecchia with the Marijuana Policy Project. Our goal is to eventually regulate and tax marijuana just like alcohol and tobacco.
If you made cannabis legal across America, the value of it would go down. It would be everywhere. It would be about the value of cauliflower. And I don't know the last time somebody has been shot and killed over cauliflower.
Legalizing it is going to make it more available to the kids, and that's what I am dead set against.
The 8th Amendment of the Constitution protects us from cruel and unusual punishment, and anyone who's ever punished for growing, smoking, or selling flowers is being punished cruelly and unusually in my eyes.
It is also considered a gateway drug, and this is based on the survey of thousands of heroin addicts who they themselves claim that marijuana was the principal gateway drug, the drug of choice prior to their selecting heroin as their next step.
I smoke whenever I want, and, you know, I've had a couple problems with the law, but it's not really like stopping me from smoking when I want to smoke. So on a day-to-day basis, I don't think legalizing marijuana is really going to make a difference.
This drug and its effect took every shred of anything I ever taught my son away. Legalizing it is just going to enable them to get it easier.
Tax it, put it in stores, make sure it's used by people 21 and over, and this is the way we can actually regulate it and keep it out of the hands of the people like children who shouldn't have access to it.
If marijuana was legalized, we would save our country about $2 billion a year on the anti-drug partnership they have.
The legalization of marijuana can change the society a great deal. One factor is that people who use marijuana begin to act strangely, emotionally. One of the side effects of marijuana use is depression.
I saw my son go from a happy, well-rounded, great kid to a quiet, reserved, depressed, non-motivated, non-caring. Didn't care about anything. Didn't seem to matter what the consequence was. He didn't care.
This is something that is a medicine. Marijuana, God made marijuana. Could God be wrong?
I hate to admit it, but my cute days are over. My pretty train has hit the end of the line, and no amount of wrinkle concealers or firming lotions are going to help me defeat the cruel hand of gravity and the dirty deeds it's done to my looks. I'm not booking modeling jobs like I used to, and I'm having trouble getting by the velvet ropes of my favorite Hollywood hotspots, and manual laborers aren't whistling at me like they used to. I could just try to continue my work in seclusion while I resign myself to aesthetic ruin, but that would be ignoring one harsh reality. My looks have been the crucial key to my success up to this point. If I can't regain my classic rugged beauty, my days in this shallowest of businesses are over before I realize my dream of appearing on the cover of Us Weekly. Cosmetic surgery pioneers like Goldie Hawn, Dick Clark, and John Kerry understand that nobody wants to look at a public figure with the face of a witch. Go ahead, poke fun at them, but until you have the painful realization that old man time has gifted you with the face of a rotted, pitted prune, and only the surgeon's miraculous knife can help, you should try to be more sensitive. Me? I've decided to go for it. I'm well aware that there can be complications with cosmetic surgery, but leaking implants are the least of my worries. It's the unlimited choice of surgical approaches that's stressing me out. Do I opt for the traditional retread and try and capture my face and body circa 1968? Do I select the surgery that will make me look only a lot better? Imagine this chin doubled, these pecs tripled, my hair count quadrupled. It would actually be, or I should say, I would actually be awe-inspiring. Or do I go the aspirational route and try and break and reset my nose, cheekbones, and eyes to look like the man I admire most, Condi Rice? I say, dare to dream. I'll see you in the waiting room. And now, here's Heidi May with this week's musical performance from Amy Mann.
Thanks, Henry. Amy Mann is a much-loved singer-songwriter known for her haunting lyrics and beautiful melodies. To free herself of major label restraints, she founded Super Ego Records and has released several successful solo albums, including her latest, The Forgotten Arm. Today, here to perform her Oscar and Grammy-nominated song Save Me from the P.T. Anderson film Magnolia, this is Amy Mann Uncut.
For good. don't you save me if you could save me from the ranks of the freaks you suspect you could never love anyone. 'Cause I can tell you know what it's like. A long farewell of the hunger strike. But can you save me? Come on, save me if you could save me from the ranks of the freaks they suspect they could never love anyone. You struck me down a gradient like Peter Pan or Superman. You will come save me. Why don't you save me if you could save me from the ranks of the freaks they suspect they could never love anyone except the freaks they suspect they could never love anyone. But the freaks they suspect they could never love anyone. Come on, save me. Why don't you save me if you could save me from the ranks of the freaks you suspect you could never love anyone except the freaks they suspect they could never love anyone except the freaks who could never love anyone.
Thank you again to my guests, Amy Mann and P.T. Anderson. Before we go, I need to point out that as The West Wing ends its 7-season run and we lose the only truly political dramatic series on TV right now, our end credits have to go to Gary Trudeau and Frank Capra. This year marks the 36th anniversary of Gary Trudeau's Doonesbury, a comic strip of wry political and social commentary. Mixing fictional and real-life politicians, Doonesbury became the first comic ever awarded a Pulitzer Prize and illustrated the point that politics could be entertaining. Frank Capra is best known for his 1939 film, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, a tale of an idealistic junior senator battling the entrenched corruption of our great capital. This was one of the first movies to show in detail the inner workings of Congress as part of the main plot. So, as The West Wing retires to syndication and DVD reissues, it's important to remember that without political entertainment, a lot of Americans would never, ever turn their attention to the important issues of the day. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.